lack of the usual dramatic intros here on our episodes, but I just wanted to get on here and thank you so much for joining us, especially on this episode of the SuperCaZt, as we talk about one of my favorite movies of all time, Borther Where Art Thou. It came out 20 years ago when me and SuperCaZt were freshmen in high school. This film touched me from the first time I saw this film, so really excited to talk about it, relive it, and really excited for you guys to join us right here on the SuperCaZt. One and all, back to the SuperCaZt. I'm your host, the man who put the super in SuperCaZt, the Superfosh, and as always, I'm joined by my good buddy, SuperCaZt, the man who put the Z in SuperCaZt. How you doing today, buddy? Yeah. All right. Well, I have performed the actual song from this. So we'll just leave it at that. Hopefully there's no video of that going around on YouTube somewhere.
Oh no.
But yes, if you didn't already know, we are talking about the early 2000s. I'm going to call it a classic, Oh Borther Where Art Thou, made by the great Coen brothers. If you're not familiar with this film, maybe you like The Big Lebowski, so many others. What they did recently with the Buster Scruggs thing, that was a collection of little shorts on Netflix, and I'll come back to that later on. But what about you, man? Are you a big Coen Brothers fan? I know you weren't a big fan of this film going into this, but what about the Coen Brothers as filmmakers?
Yeah, I like them. I haven't seen a ton of their films, but what I've seen, I like how their movies are kind of off kilter, just kind of weird. And they're definitely very talented, and I really like how they approach making movies, and because everything I've read about it is just like there's a collaborative thing with them, and the fact that they could make that work for close to 40 years now, it's pretty amazing. But I really dig some that a lot of people don't like Hail Caesar. I really like that one. That was their last big theater one that I can think of. But also, of course, Fargo's great. Big Lebowski's great. I mean, they're very, very much great at this sort of comedic thing, and in my opinion. Even though I think my favorite film by them, period, is No Country for Old Men. I think, that one just, we have to do that one sometime soon, because that one's
man.
Very chilling and very effective film. But this one, I have a history with it. I haven't watched. I mean, up until we watched it a couple years ago, I didn't watch it for about close to 20 years, and then I've watched it twice in the past 2 years or so, and it still baffles me. I don't get this movie totally, but hopefully I can get my thoughts somewhat out there, because I have pieces of understanding. I have things that I like and things that I want to talk about.
Right.
Not everything works for me, but I think we're going to have a fun conversation discussing this one.
Yeah, no doubt.
Say, any of you boys, Smithies? Or, if not Smithies per se, were you otherwise trained in the metallurgic arts before straitened circumstances forced you into life aimless wandering?
I was actually not as familiar with the Coen brothers going into seeing this movie for the first time. This movie, of course, came out, I think we were freshmen in high school, like early 2000s, something like that. And it was actually introduced to me by a cousin of mine. We were over at my grandparents' house, and he was like, this movie came out with George Clooney. And this is, back when George Clooney, I just think, had finished ER or something like that. So he was on his way up. And my cousin was really excited about this film. So I was like, yeah, we'll watch it. And I just fell in love with it. I just thought it was great. I loved the story, the characters, the music, as we'll get into. This is a film that really spoke to me on the first viewing, within the first couple minutes, and it's always stayed with me. Even though I might have gone years between viewings, it's always a movie that I can recite in my head almost verbatim and just come up with. And there's just so many good performances that we'll definitely get into of this. But yeah, a lot of these movies that we've reviewed, and this is not a bad thing at all, but I know that you've been very, very fond of. So I think the shoe's on the other foot for this one, that I'm very fond of this film. And hopefully by the end of it, Steven can at least say, hey, it was a good film, and you know, it was worth the time.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely in that camp already. You're not having to convert me there. I had a great viewing experience with this last night. Mm-hmm. Even though there were some times where I was scratching my head, I was like, "What's going on?" Right. But I think that's part of it.
Right.
And to me, the biggest thing is like, as you're talking about like your experience with this, is I don't see how this movie was like a mainstream movie. I don't see how this was released in the theaters and people were like, hey, you guys got to go see this. Yeah. I don't know if it was because we lived in the South and maybe our people kind of identified with this movie and thought it was like a little, not totally like life, but they could definitely see some aspects that they identified with. I don't know. It's definitely an enigma. And I don't think it would play as well in 2023. But that being said, I really enjoyed this film. I really like what it's going to do. Let's get into it.
Fixing an ambush. Do not seek the treasure. We thought you was a toad.
My theory with that, as far as why this movie became what it became, I think can simply be boiled down to the music. I really do. I really feel like this music, because a lot of it is old-timey, you know, timeless music, and you know, this really got the bluegrass, you know, revolution going on, and I know I caught on to it, and you know, the soundtrack was huge and had a lot of old-timey stuff. Of course, had Man of Constant Sorrow, which blew up, and so I think that's where you start, is that the music was very identifiable, and the story is just, it's an interesting story. Of course, it's loosely based on the Odyssey, and you know, me not being a huge Odyssey fan, I can't really tell you how much of the story it's faithful to, but I think there's a lot, you know, to go into, but there's a lot of performances in this film that are very memorable for those of us who love this film. And of course, our three leads, Tim Blake Nelson, John Turturro, and of course, George Clooney. So let's start there. Those three guys. What's your thoughts on their performance as a trio, and how do you think they worked in this film?
Well, should I get deep already?
Yeah, man, go for it.
Okay, so this is something I noticed, because the first mark I wrote on my paper was, is Clooney a hero? Because at this point, I don't even know Everett's character name. I don't know what he is. But I'm just like, for it to be the Odyssey, because they put that in bold letters whenever the movie comes. It's like, based off the Odyssey by Homer. Yeah. I'm like, wait a second. These guys are not heroes. They're criminals. And they're trying to escape jail at the beginning. And it's to me, that parallel to Homer at the beginning, it does not work. I mean, first off, we have who's supposed to be Odysseus. I guess Everett's the closest to it, but Everett is a pretty terrible guy for most of the film. Whether or not he redeems himself later on, but Odysseus, he's got his streak to him where he is kind of vain. He is sort of full of himself, but Everett takes it to a different level, almost to a comical level. But we'll get into that later. But to me, the thing that's kind of unique about this is they're kind of like all three of them. If you add them all together, they're Odysseus, because Everett, he's the brains. That's without saying. He's the brains, and he's a little bit of the good looks. I guess you got to have that, because Odysseus, I guess he's pretty handsome to work. But then, who is his who is his brawn? Who is his strength? Obviously, it's Pete.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Pete, he's the bronze. He doesn't think.
Nope.
He just acts, and that's he's very emotional too. I guess he could be that, but to me, the heart of it is Tim Blake Nelson as Delbert. I think he's the kind of their conscience. He's kind of their heart, and the three of these guys together are great chemistry. It reminds me of like very much a Marx Brothers thing they got going for most of the movie.
Yeah.
So I really dug that. I really like that about this film, and just how they go on this journey together and how they all change. And the performances are great too.
Yeah, definitely so. I did not come into this film a huge George Clooney fan. We won't even talk about him playing Batman and Robin, at least not on this episode. But so, I was a little leery, but I thought I did not realize how funny George Clooney could be. His comedic timing with all three of these guys was just really on point. And I like that they all had three different personalities. They all kind of brought something unique to their little partnership. And yeah, like you said, Everett is definitely the brains of the operation. But he is a little bit conniving. I mean, he makes up this whole story that there's going to be this, fortune that they're all going to split. And then come to find out, oh, by the way, spoiler alert, this movie's 20
I was about to say
that. But come to find out, there was no fortune. He just wanted to get back to his wife and wanted them to help him break out. And, you call that for what it is. It's kind of sweet. It's kind of underhanded. Maybe a little of both. I don't know. But they run into some really interesting characters. And, as much as this movie is about these three guys, there are so many characters in this film that I think really stick with you. And, of course, one of the first ones you see was the old blind guy on the railroad track. What do you think about some of these side characters? I'm going to start with him. Like, what was your impression on those people?
Well, that's what the whole story is about. Is they're just on this odyssey of sorts. They're on this journey through Mississippi, Mississippi to the Depression, which got to come back to that later because that makes the whole movie to me. But he, this blind guy, he's great, and he is I guess a parallel to the Odyssey because it has that sort of oracle feeling to it, that their fates are fixed, that they're on this path and they're going to end up at that house about to be hanged, and then something's going to happen. We just know it's going to happen. And this, I really like that aspect of it. I like all the different characters because that's what this whole film is. It feels very disjointed because it's just them going on this journey, meeting up random people, getting random adventures, and eventually the movie ends. I do think it adds up to something, but I could see how you could get kind of just sucked into this film and just kind of get wrapped into these little scenes and these little characters. And I think obviously he's great. I think the guy that they come afterwards, Pete's brother and his kid, I like them. I like the
Wallop.
They're pretty good. And of course, there's just too many to name.
Me wine. Ye, you hearts grow weary. Still shall ye follow the way, even unto your salvation.
I always love that character just because, especially the first few times I saw this movie, because, you don't know what's about to happen. If you've watching this movie first time, you don't know what's about to happen, and you don't really realize how, important his words are to them. And pretty much everything he, says there at the beginning ends up coming true. Including the cow on top of the cotton house. That's one of my favorite parts when he sees that. He's like, "Oh my gosh, he's right."
His look, he's just like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." And I agree with that. I think the blind guy, he sets the tone for the film. He does let you know this is gonna be kind of weird, and that's kind of how this movie is. It just kind of flows, very Huck Finish, or just very just like, I don't know, a bunch of little adventures. And I think I got to get back to these three guys real fast because Pete, we've already mentioned him a few times, John Turturro. This guy, I don't know if you've watched many films with him.
Mhm.
This is like the only time I actually like his character, because
Really?
he's such a good actor that
Yeah.
everything he's in, I hate his character. I'm just like, this guy is the worst person ever. I hope he
Yeah.
dies. I love the actor. I think he's awesome.
Yeah.
But the fact that all these characters he plays are just terrible people. And this guy, he's terrible, but he's pretty lovable. And even though I don't think he's doing a great Southern accent, I think that even though that might be kind of doing that on purpose, I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
But his character, he's really funny, and I think he adds a lot to every situation they're in, because I think that's kind of the thing, is these three guys all kind of build off each other, and the way the characters are written, that they can you kind of just want to see how they react to these different situations together.
Exactly. Yeah.
What in the Sam Hill?
Pete's cousin turned us in for the bounty.
The hell you say? Wallace is kin.
Sorry, Pete. I know we're kin, but they got this depression on. How I got to do for me and mine?
I'm gonna kill you, Judas Iscariot, hog dweller, you miserable horse-eating son of a...
Yeah, I love John Turturro's character. Of course, for me, Tim Blake Nelson's character is probably my favorite of the three, just because I love Tim Blake Nelson. This was actually my first film to see Tim Blake Nelson in. And I don't know, he was just one of the reasons I really fell into this film, because I just thought, that's how I would act. I'm just like this guy. So I really kind of resonated with him. What about you, man? Did you resonate with any of those three? Like, who do you think you were the most like?
To answer that question, I'd probably say Everett, just because he's kind of flawed. He's a very flawed character. Yeah. He like you said, he's conniving. Yeah. He basically is pretty selfish for most of the film, but I do like that I want to say he does get redeemed a little bit. I think he does change a little bit. I could totally miss that. I might be totally misinterpreting the film, but I think that's kind of like he actually has an arc where he kind of does change, and I think I've changed a lot as a person. I think I don't know. I just think, as far as that question, yeah, I identify him the most. But Tim Blake Nelson, like you're saying, Everett, Delbert, he's just a great guy. He's I feel like of the three, he's the most authentic. I think he feels like a real breathed in person. Like the other two seem like they're playing characters. He is the character.
Right.
And
exactly.
I think that's very impressive. My thing I was thinking while I was watching the movie is like, do I want to see him in more movies, or is it great that he's just in these few films and he just blows it out of the park every time?
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Well, I'll be a son of a bitch. Delmar's been saved.
Well, that's it, boys. I've been redeemed. The preacher done washed away all my sins and transgressions. It's a straight and narrow from here on out, and heaven everlasting's my reward.
I think this movie has a very important part towards the beginning, and that's when our heroes, quote unquote, meet Tommy, who becomes their guitar player.
Oh yeah.
And again, you got to think about this in the context of when this is supposed to be. This is 1930s. This is when white people and black people aren't playing together very, very well, unfortunately. And this is obviously also play on Robert Johnson and meeting him. And I really love that part. I thought that was really good. I think that was kind of a good nod to Robert Johnson, because if you don't know who Robert Johnson is, he's a guy that supposedly met the devil at a crossroads and sold his soul to play guitar. And they kind of reference that at the radio station when they make the recording. But I just love that character. He doesn't say a whole lot. Speaking of a character that doesn't do a whole lot, but I think he's very important to the entire narrative of this story. Obviously, what happens at the end and everything with the clan. We'll get back to that in a second. But I think that he's one of those characters that a lot of people almost forget when they talk about this film. But I think he's probably one of, if not the most important character in this story, besides the three main guys.
Yeah, I think he enhances every scene he's in, and I thought whenever he shows up, it changes the movie for me. Like it kind of like I'm into it early on. I'm like, this is fun. This is pretty cool. I really like the look of it. I like the music. But then when he shows up and they go to the recording station, that's when I really get into this movie. I think he's awesome. I think he's kind of like, he reminds me of like the Three Stooges yet again. I have to recommend something like that. And you know how sometimes you had Larry, Moe, and Curly. Sometimes you had Shemp. He's kind of like the Shemp to me. He just comes in. He kind of fits with the group. He enhances the group, and it's a great aspect to the film. And I love the call out to Robert Johnson, of course. Hopefully, he lived longer than Robert Johnson, because Tommy seems like he's a really good guy, and gets into a bad spot later in the film. But luckily, his buddies kind of bail him out there, and. We got to talk about that recording scene, because
it's probably my favorite scene in the entire film. If I'm being honest, because it's just great. It's just so good.
Yeah, it's got it all. It's very funny as they started off, and it also fits with the whole thing about the Depression and how things are changing. They have radio now. They're going to be getting their words out there, and. To me, it's just like these guys have not mentioned music at all the whole film.
Right.
And they just come in and they're just pros. They just know how to stand perfectly to the microphone. They can sing their butts off. How did they harmonize like that? How did they figure out this thing? When did they write this song even? It makes no sense, but I love that part. I love that they are just pros when they come in, and they're just amazing.
I remember never questioning any of that when I first saw this film, but now that you mention it, it is kind of funny that these guys, especially Tommy, because like Tommy doesn't know these guys. He's been in the car with them probably a couple hours, and unless they talked about the song, this is an old-timey song. Man Called Starro is an old-timey song, back in the 20s and 30s, I think it was written around this time. So it is appropriate, but how they knew it, I have no idea. But I don't question that. That's just something I don't care. It's just, it is what it is. And as far as their singing and their talent, obviously that's not George Clooney's singing lead. And there's a whole story on that. But other than that, man, it did remind me a lot of the Three Stooges with that, just the singing part, just because of how funny the other guys are, and it's just so good. And of course, blind DJ guy, he's hilarious. He's a funny guy in his own right, and unbeknownst to them, that record gets put on his radio station, and they become like world famous. Except nobody knows who they are, and it shows you. It really explains the time then, because there was no internet, obviously. There wasn't even television at this point. So everything was broadcast through the radio, even the news and so forth. So yeah, this is when the movie, even though it really spoke to me from the very beginning, this is when the movie just grabbed me and said, no, this is really, really good. So yeah, I go back to that radio station scene. And, when they run out and they're all happy and everything because they recorded a song, and I think they got some money for it or something like that. And so they see the mayor or the governor who does his own radio show, and he's like, I'm not here to record. I'm the mayor. I'm the governor, for goodness sake. And that juxtaposition that comes back around at the end of the film, that's genius right there on the Coen brothers. And I think that really shows the connection. While there may be a lot of disjointness in the story and everything, I love how that gets paid off, at the close of the film.
Yeah, definitely. That's like one of the really things that I like about the film is the writing. Is like I've been saying earlier, it's very disjointed. It's a bunch of little episodes, but they somehow bring all the characters back at the end. They come somehow connect all these things. This whole thing with the race for the governor, the Soggy Bottom Boys, even Dapper Dan, that little plot thread that they just love throwing in there every 10 seconds, the whole Dapper Dan thing.
2 weeks. That don't do me no good.
Here's Ford Auto Man's Bristol.
Hold on now. I don't want this pomade. I want Dapper Dan.
I don't care, Dapper Dan. I care Fop.
Well, I don't want Fop, goddammit. I'm a Dapper Dan man.
They bring it all together, and it kind of works. It's very ingenious, like you're saying, and I guess we can get into that a little bit now. The politics of it, because or just I guess I'm getting ahead of myself. The setting, it's Mississippi, it's the Depression, and I don't think it's our depression because it seems like this is very sort of magical realism going on here.
Right.
Because we do have like people that can predict the future. We have these random ladies that can put you to sleep, I guess.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff like that, and it all works. But at the same time, it's a very bright film. It's a very comical film, but there is some darkness kind of hidden underneath that. I think. I think one of the characters that really gets that is our Cyclops stand-in in this one, John Goodman's character.
Oh yes.
What are they trying to say with that character, you think?
That's the thing. When you first meet the character, you think he's just this big lovable, goofball that you've seen John Goodman play in other roles. Whereas he gets the guys all to his own, and he's going to try to rob them and beat the crap out of him, and he gets disappointed, and then he kills quote unquote Pete, or who the guys think is, because he's a frog that they caught. So just to explain that to people that have not seen this movie is so difficult, because it's like that shouldn't make sense at all, but in the context of the film you just have to watch it. But as far as his character goes, it was a switch. You could not have foreseen what he ends up being just from his intro. And I think that's good writing and obviously great talent by the great John Goodman. So while the character ends up being nasty and everything, I think it's an interesting character, especially at the point of that story. And then what happens to him at the end of the film with the Klan meeting and everything. And we'll get to that Klan scene in a bit, because I'm sure you have a lot to say, as I do. But as far as this scene with him, just him, I thought it was really interesting because, again, it's not anything you would have foreseen in the intro of this character.
No, and to me, it's the darkest part of the film, just because this he's the one true evil character, I think. He is in it to just take advantage of people. And keep in mind, this is depression. Everybody's desperate. Everybody needs money.
Yep.
And he's taking it too far. He's not going to give anybody any help. He's going to take everything. And he does it with a smile on his face. He does it laughing at these guys. He's like, you guys are pathetic. How could you fall for this? And it shows you Everett is full of himself. That he's really smart, but he's so full of himself. He's just like, there's another guy like me, likes to talk a lot. He thinks he's made this new friend, and he's kind of missed it all. And I think as far as the story goes, if we are trying to connect all these things, it's essential for his character to become humbled here, to lose everything, because it was almost coming too easy, and he's just like, you know what, Pete, we don't need him at this point. It kind of pulls, I guess this scene does pull him back closer to his actual mission the whole time, trying to find his wife and everything. But before he could do that, he's got to do some other crazy adventures. But so we'll get to that later.
What? I ain't nothing but a damn toad.
Well, you don't understand. That's
You know these things give you warts.
Yeah, I think that scene with Big Dan kind of, we were talking about, his Everett's, motivations and everything. I think it kind of gives a little bit of maybe a scale to say, Everett's got his flaws, sure, but he's not complete. I mean, there's still some goodness in him. They pick up Tommy and all of that, and I think that kind of shows that they've got some goodness in them. And then, they're trying to befriend this guy because they think he's a good guy that's going to help them out, and then he turns on them. I think that just kind of gives you an idea that well, Everett might have his flaws. This is the bad guy right here. This is the true bad guy, and it kind of gives a little bit, at least in my opinion, some redemptiveness to Everett's character.
Yeah, and I think the other truly bad characters, I mean, I think we could say the politicians are. I think even old Pappy O'Daniel, he's a funny character, but he's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem like he's on the up and up, like he's somebody I should be friends with. But
Right.
the other guy with the midget, can you explain that? I mean, I understand why he'd be very popular and very prominent politician during this 1930s Depression era of Mississippi, but what's the thing with getting at the broom and having the midget on his campaign?
I'm not sure.
It's crazy.
You come to find out that he's very racist.
Yeah.
And you know, he is definitely bad. And luckily, I love the scene where they literally take him out on a rail. I think that's fantastic. And I thought, that's what he deserved. And everybody really gets what they deserve in this at the very end. If you think about it. And this guy specifically, because he comes off as this just goofy guy that wants to do for the little guy, and then has a actual little midget to be. I mean, that's putting it on the nose, pretty much. But you have to just laugh at him because he does represent a bad portion of our society that we grew up in. There were people that we grew up with that were probably like this, so we understand that. But I don't know, like the character gets more uncomfortable the more you see him, and it's not until he gets run out on a rail that you're just like, oh, thank God he got what he deserved. So
yeah, and it's great. And that was actually, I mean, we'll get to that scene because that's my favorite scene, period. But he gets what he deserves. They all do. Even the other main bad guy I think of is the guy, I don't even know his character's name, what position he is. He's the guy that's trying to hunt them down, the sort of, I guess, sheriff guy.
Like a bounty hunter or something?
Bounty hunter. There's lightning appears in the sky every time he's around. So he seems like he's some sort of witch. I mean, not witch, a wizard or something. He's pretty terrible. And I don't know whether to laugh at him or be scared of him. Every time I see him, it's what this movie's all about. It has its darker moments. This guy's a pretty deplorable guy because he's just like, there is no justice. I am justice. I just hang people. He's pretty messed up. But I want to mainly talk about the comedy from this. There is one scene that I just died laughing.
I know it's coming.
The fight, Everett's fight. Everett's fight.
And stay out of the Woolworth.
I was on the floor, man. Like, what is he doing? He's got his hands up like this. He's gonna fight for his woman, try to win her back, and he gets so embarrassed in front of everybody. Then he gets thrown out of Woolworths, and this is the best acting I think George Clooney's ever done, because it's mainly physical. Because he's shocked he's like, this was supposed to work. I was supposed to just beat this guy, and instead he gets
knocked out.
It's the worst fight ever. History of movies, it's the worst fight. It's hilarious.
It's so funny because we mentioned Three Stooges, because this is just out of Three. Like, even his fighting stance is like really, really weird. And then he gets hit and he like shakes it off, like, it's such a funny scene. You almost forget it's George Clooney. And of course, it all starts with, you can't swear at my wife, well, you can't marry my fiance, all this kind of thing. And I quote that all the time. So, this is a really funny scene. And then, of course, the closing of it with, and stay out of the Woolworth. I mean, it's just like...
Yeah. And
talk about random. There's a lot of randomness in this film. But to me, That's the cake. That's the best right there. Because, why he would even think to do that in the middle of a store, and then, to attack him, and then he got humiliated and then gets thrown out. I mean, it's just, he gets a little bit humbled, I think. I mean, he gets beat up a lot in this film if you think about it, because Big Dan Teague beats him up. This guy does. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh yeah, this so funny. I mean, and like you said, he gets humbled. He's gonna fight for his wife. He's gonna try to get her back. Yeah. And at this point, he doesn't really deserve her. He's not done anything good enough to win her favor. I mean, for one thing, he's had all these daughters, and he doesn't seem like he's really in the position to support them. So I'm with her. I'm like, look for another guy. Look for somebody who's bona fide. Yeah. Because Everett is not bona fide for most of this film. Maybe he becomes bona fide by the end, and hopefully learns to fight one day, because that's so embarrassing. And I love Delmer. Were we kicked out of this Woolworths or all Woolworths? It's just like they never answered that. This is one of the great mysteries of the film. But they eventually meet back up with Pete. The whole "we thought you was a toad" thing, and
I love that scene. Oh my gosh,
that was my parents when they watched this movie. They would quote that all the time. They thought that was the funniest thing ever. But it culminates in this. Like, actually, there's two big scenes I got to talk about as we start to get closer to the end of this. So it culminates in this one scene that every time I watch it, it seems like it's more audacious and crazier than I remember it. And that's the scene with the KKK. They show up at this Klan thing, and it's like a weird ritual. They're out there dancing and doing this like weird sort of musical thing that I'm just like, what were they thinking when they decided, let's have this scene? It's just nuts.
My wife can't watch it. Like, she is scared of that scene. It's scary, especially when that guy sings "Oh Death," which, why is he singing that in the middle of that? I don't know, but whatever. And it's supposed to be the goofy politician guy. Spoiler alert. It's an uncomfortable scene, but I don't think they cross any kind of lines or boundaries as far as, because they do make it a comical thing that, these guys are kind of stupid, kind of like what Tarantino does with Django and those guys. In fact, those two scenes kind of remind me of each other, and we talk about that all the time, me and my wife do. So you have to look at the goofiness and the ridiculous. Yes, was this organization real? Yes. Did they do a lot of bad stuff? Yes. But are they nothing but stupid hicks? Yeah, they are. At the end of the day, that's exactly what they are. So to put them in that kind of a light in this scene, I thought was the best way to show it, because you don't want to act like they're some reverent, group that, because they're not. But,
No.
And that's just it. That's just it. So I thought that the Coen brothers did a really good job of not making that scene any more uncomfortable than it could have been. So I really applaud them for doing it like that.
Yeah, and they do it in a brilliant way. Like like you're saying, it starts off. It's just like, because they just stumble out of nowhere. Their light like flashes in our three characters' face, and then you're like, what is going on? And then you have this weird dance thing, like I said, and it gets really trippy. They have the old death thing and all that. But then as soon as where it could get kind of scary, where it could kind of messed up, because they're like, oh yeah, we're going to hang somebody, we're going to do this stuff. Then it becomes kind of like the Three Stooges again. They put on these robes themselves, and they're going to get their buddy Tommy and save him. And you never feel like they're in danger. You feel like this is our heroes are going to be fine. They're going to save their buddy. They're going to get out of here. Something comical is going to happen. It just turns just like that. And I think the movie balances that tone very well, that they can have something like this that kind of strikes you as, oh, this is kind of dark. And then all of a sudden, no, these guys are ridiculous. They're stupid. And I think it's just pretty much as soon as they open their mouths, it's like you hear the voices underneath the hoods. You're like, yeah, they sound stupid.
Color guard is colored. Who made them the color guard?
But my favorite scene, period, hands down, this concert at the end. It is.
I love it.
This is my favorite. So there's Johnny Be Good, and this one is almost on the same tier to me. This is, it's just a great performance, and it's a showstopper. Like I clapped at the end of the last night. I was just like, that was awesome. I felt like I was in the crowd with these people during this scene, enjoying this song, and it comes at the movie just builds up to this. Everything has gotten crazier and crazier, building up. It's gotten funny. We've laughed with these guys, and now they perform this song and they become celebrities, and everybody showers them with this. Because to me, everybody in the whole scene is just like, it's the Soggy Bottom Boys.
Exactly.
I feel the same excitement they do, and I think that's a magical scene. I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really awesome way to close out the film, because, you know, all the audience people have heard this song on the radio. They've listened to this for who knows how long, and then here they are right in front of them, but they bring everything full circle back to this song, and it's, of course, a little more cheery because they have the extra instruments and stuff like that, and of course the dancing, which I'm sure we were going to talk about. That dancing, man. I heard actually on a video before we recorded this that there was a dance instructor that was on set and was going to teach George Clooney something, and he's like, nah, I'll do it my way. And I think they ended up going with whatever George Clooney wanted to do. And honestly, that makes it even better, because you could tell he's just being goofy. You know, he just tried anything, and the crowd is eating it up. And then, of course, what happens? The governor is like, "Oh man, I got to make these guys part of me. It's good PR. I would have probably done the same thing. You know, these guys are white hot. You're gonna get these guys to be on your campaign. I mean, that's a surefire win, then, right? So you can't really blame him for that. But yeah, you're clapping along, and it's just such a. But the reaction of the wife, or ex-wife, or whatever she is at this point, I don't think she even realized that was them, you know, and so the look on her face is priceless. And yeah, it's just, I mean, it really, and that's the thing about this film. Does it have its flaws? Sure. Is it a little bit kind of disjointed at times? Sure. But is it just a whole lot of fun? Yes. It's just, and I think that's the point of the film. It's not going to change your life and make you into something you weren't before you watched the film. I watched this film at a very interesting part of our growing up process, because, you know, we were freshmen in high school. We're just kind of inching our way into maturity, and to see this, it really just put a smile on my face, and it's not stopped doing that every single time. And so whether I see a clip or I watch this film in full like I did the other day, it's one of my favorites. And while I've never actually put a top 10 movie list of all time, I think this is probably on there just because of everything I mentioned. And it's just, you know, I think it's a really, really good film, and I love it. So, you know, excuse me for being a fanboy, but I can't help it, so...
Yeah, I love it for that scene. I think that scene is just, it's amazing, like I've been saying.
Yep.
And last night when I was thinking about it, I was like, why did they not end it right there? It seemed perfect. It seems like, let's just end it, happy ending. But this morning when I woke up and was thinking about it a little bit more, and I was trying to figure out what this movie actually adds up to, and how these scenes kind of work, is this is kind of like, if the movie would end in here, and if he would just got her back, it's like he didn't really earn it. He wasn't totally reaching out, and yes, he didn't meet all the stuff that he was supposed to meet according to the Oracle or anything. None of that's happened yet. But it's almost like the danger they face after this really, they proves them. It makes them have to reach out and believe in something else beyond themselves afterwards. And I think that's what the movie's kind of adding up to for this character anyway, for Everett. If I had to critique anything, it's like he changes. Things happen to him, but the other two guys, I never really understand their goals the whole way through. Yeah. But I think this is a film that I'm going to want to watch more and more just because I really like it. And I really enjoyed the experience of watching it. But it still has me a little bit puzzled. I have a lot of threads of things that I want to connect, but I just haven't connected it yet. So I'll definitely check it out soon.
If I could critique this film in any way, I would probably say something like that, because that was me for a long time as far as the ending is concerned, because I'm a romantic. I want him to get the girl, everybody to celebrate, and then boom, credits roll. But this movie doesn't do that. It goes on another, 15, 20 minutes, I think it is, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you get to this climax with the dam and everything, and then you get to where he's got the ring, and she says, oh, that's not the ring. So even at the end, it's not really, secure. So it's resolved, I guess is the word I was trying to say, because he gets the wrong ring. And that used to bug the crap out of me, because I was like, that's not neat. That means there's, we don't get to see any of that. We don't know. Does he get the right ring? Do they, that's the thing that always really bothered me, to the point I had to just stop thinking about the last 5 minutes of the film, just because of how it just bothered me that it did not resolve in this, classic Disney or whatever, happily ever after thing. There's still questions. But as an adult, as a person that's grown up and kind of matured, that's cool. I mean, it is what it is. I think the movie is not defined by the ending anyway. I don't think that's really necessarily the point, because it wasn't resolved like that. So I think the point is just the journey, the crazy journey. And, we all go through crazy journeys in life, and we all go through these things. And, it's never really resolved until, we're done. We're dead. So, I mean, I think it's kind of a genius way to finish the film, looking at it now as an adult, as I did, as opposed to, as a teenager. So I give the Coens credit. I give them a lot of credit for that. They really penned a script that was goofy, was kind of dark, silly, and then there's that little bit of romance there too that I think makes this film just the classic that it deserves to be. And yeah, I'll definitely watch this film many, many more times, Lord willing. But yeah, it's just a good time, and I love it.
As you keep saying, and I'm definitely transitioning more to that. So and this was fun talking about it. So I'm glad we got to do this. Glad we got to watch this, and I highly urge any of you guys out there to seek this one out. It hasn't had a 4K release or anything big like that, but it's a movie that needs to come back in conversations. I think this would be a movie that needs to stay alive, and people need to keep watching and definitely keep listening to the music. I think that's the part that really works for the film and kind of binds the whole thing together. And it's got a great vibe, so can't wait to watch it again one day.
And stay out of the Woolworth.
On the next episode of the SuperCaZt. On the next episode of the SuperCaZt.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. We have plenty more where that came from. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. And please don't forget to follow us at SuperCaZt. And as always, thanks for joining us here on the SuperCaZt.